You're listening to IHC's Podcast.
Hi, folks. Welcome to IHC's podcast, Culture is Medicine. My name is Marissa Hemstreet. I'm the Communications Coordinator with Indian Health Center, working in our Development and Communications Department. I'm from the Canyoncito Band of Navajos, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm here today with the lovely Angel.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Angel or Tlahuiz. I use he, she, they pronouns. My people are Benza, which translates to people of the clouds. The Aztecs used to call us Zapotec. Both of my parents were born in Yalalag, which is in the high mountains of Oaxaca. And they migrated to the Tenochtitlan, which is Mexico City, and that's where I was born.
Awesome. Well, thank you for meeting with me today. So the whole reason that I reached out to you is because I am the co-founder of IHC's Two-Spirit Group, and what better organization to partner with than the BAAITS organization? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So BAAITS stands for the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit organization, and it was founded in 1999. So we are celebrating 25 years this year. And it was founded by community members from the Two-Spirit community who were organizing the International Two-Spirit Gathering that happened actually down near San Jose in 1999. A lot of the societies, the Two-Spirit societies on a yearly basis organize a Two-Spirit gathering. And it's hosted either here in the States or in Canada and fluctuates back and forth. And so that particular year, community members who were really active and who wanted to create these beautiful spaces organized themselves and hosted that international gathering. So afterwards, they decided, well, why don't we continue organizing and continue creating spaces, specifically two spaces that honored spiritual traditions. So the BAAITS is known to have been started on a prayer, and also sober spaces, because there were other spaces, especially for the LGBTQ community and Two-Spirit communities, that were around alcohol and drugs. And those were all kind of the only spaces available to us. And so they wanted to create spaces that were sober, for us to be able to socialize, to be able to learn culturally from one another, and to be able to practice our spiritual practices, and come back into the circle, come back into the ceremonial circle. So BAAITS was created, and it's for the last 23 years. It has been a volunteer-run organization. We have not had any full-time staff. We may have had a couple of part-time positions here and there, depending on the grants. And once we did have an office space over at the San Francisco LGBT Center. But aside from that, a lot of the activities and the events that were created have been volunteer run, with sometimes very little funding to now being able to have a nice budget and have 2 staff members on board. Me as a full-time position and Samora as a part-time program manager position.
Awesome. And I'm happy again that to hear the full history a little bit and the reasoning behind BAAITS. So often folks at IHC, the whole reason I got in contact with you all is my co-founder Stephanie Reynolds. She knew a little bit about BAAITS. Me, I'm not from the Bay Area, so I was like, what's BAAITS? She's been around here for a while, and she was just talking about all the work that you all have done, and it's nice to hear the reasoning, and again, we want to be able to have sober, sacred, safe spaces to practice.
We are the first and oldest public Two-Spirit powwow in the world. There was none before. And so the first one was held at the San Francisco LGBT Center. What I hear that folks didn't know whether or not folks were going to show up, if folks were going to, there was going to be pushback. Apparently it was standing room only. The Rainbow Room at the San Francisco LGBT Center was fully packed. It happened the second year, fully packed. It had to be moved to another location, to a bigger location in Oakland, and subsequently it has landed in one of the biggest locations that we have here in San Francisco, Fort Mason Center. And last year, I was sharing with you earlier, we welcomed almost 4,000 of our closest relatives to be in community with us. And so, was there a need? Yes. Has it been well received by community? Yes. Is this kind of a signature event? Yes. Are we contributing to the health and well-being in many, many aspects of community members? Yes. That's why it's grown to the extent it's grown. And it continues to be run by volunteers. Volunteers, my role with the powwow committee as a staff member is strictly support. And they are keeping me on my toes, because, they're taking the organizing of the powwow to levels that I would not have imagined. Or, folks that started the powwow could have ever, dreamt of or imagined. But that is the power of community. That is the power of coming back into the circle. That's a power of belonging. I say this and maybe I'll get some folks to push back on, but the circle has never been complete without us. We were always part of ceremonial circles. We were always part of community, and unfortunately, in some instances, we've had to create our own. We've had to create our families, our communities, our friendships, our kin, just as a survival mechanism, and so, but I'll stop there because she's a talker.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, and then just, on that same note, that's the why that we at Indian Health Center and our Two-Spirit group, we decided to have that event this past year in 2023, September, the Chosen Family Gathering, because again, finding these spaces that are queer inclusive, Two-Spirit inclusive, whichever, acronym you fall on the spectrum that you identify as, a lot of the times, our family who have been experienced colonism, and then no matter which religion, again, a lot of them believe in hard binaries, and so that's important for us to find our space, make space. And I'm glad to hear that as far back as the early 90s that BAAITS was able to do that here in San Francisco and in the world in general. And just to hear how big, you were saying, that it was the first Two-Spirit powwow in the world, and I didn't know that, so thank you for sharing that.
And I do have to acknowledge that the history of Two-Spirit community members in the Bay Area goes back even further. So there's another organization that's still around, that's the founder's still around, Gay American Indians. And I think they were founded in 1974. And they were doing a lot of very beautiful community building as well. And so we have a long, long history in the Bay Area of creating community, of being part of. And, in a lot of the gatherings here in San Francisco, at least, I've noticed that, that we are part of the larger, American Indian movements, but we've always have, and so during this time and during the BAAITS Two-Spirit powwow, we just get to highlight and celebrate, each other and our allies, and our families and our friends. Um, and actually, we're using the word accomplices much more than allies, because accomplices will show up for us very differently than allies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking definitely for accomplices.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I like that reframing. They're down to do whatever. What does the term Two-Spirit mean to you?
Wow. So personally, I was not connected intimately with BAAITS. I've been in the Bay Area on and off for, over 30 years. I came to school out here and just stayed. And most of my work has been doing HIV work over the years, working with predominantly BIPOC communities, and a lot of immigrant communities as well. And so when I was able to connect with BAAITS, I was able to attend a talk by an elder who has since transitioned, Marlon Physical. And Marlon had this definition of Two-Spirit that I resonated a lot with. And how he framed, I think he used he, him pronouns, how he framed the Two-Spirit identity is unlike mainstream and the concept of coming out. He framed it as coming into. You come into a Two-Spirit identity. But coming into has a lot of responsibilities, has a lot of spiritual responsibilities, has a lot of community responsibilities, has a lot of, it's not just you. It's impacting your family, your friends, your community, the world. And so you have to be ready for that identity, because you're going to be asked to show up in very different ways. And so for me, that was my experience in claiming a Two-Spirit identity. I think the Two-Spirit identity has to be very personal. And it means something totally different to different members of our community. And all of them are okay. I think that what is key is that we are comfortable with in our own skin, and we show up for each other, when we can. And hopefully, do some healing work along the way.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
What are some challenges that BAAITS has faced in the past, and how do you feel that you've overcome those challenges?
I think because we have been a volunteer-run organization for the past 23 years, folks have lives, and some folks have very busy lives. And so maintaining an organization without staff is tough, and how did they do it? I have to give folks who have been with the organization 20 plus years, 20 plus years. I have to give them credit, because this has been a labor of love, a labor of survival, to be able to continue year after year, with, sometimes not even a thank you, and I'm sure, and I think that we have some folks that, had to reach in their own pockets, to be able to fund, some of the activities and some of the events. And so we're grateful for all of that. But, it was tough. It's been tough to maintain without. I think what has been how we overcame some of that was that we let the work speak for itself. And we just began partnering with folks who could tell the story well.
Mm-hmm.
And let folks know, look, y'all, here are these organizations that are getting oogles of funding and can barely reach their deliverables. And then we have, this volunteer-run organization that is at capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and, I'll share this with you, but, the cost to put on the powwow now is, in the six figures now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even accounting with all the volunteer hours. And so it's a really expensive event to put on, And do we get enough funding? We're grateful for our funders. And do we need more? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the work speaks for itself. So what we've been able to do to overcome, some of those challenges is to, get together with some really amazing organizations, who are now our fiscal sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Seventh Generation Fund and Queer Cultural Center, who have also allowed us to have access to grant writers, who have been able to tell our story and tell it well, to be able to then bring in those resources, that will sustain us for 2, 3, 4 years. And then, then allowing, us to bring staff on to be able to do year-long programming. So that's what Samora is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me to continue building the infrastructure of the organization and continue fundraising, and fortunately, I have some skills up in that, in that realm and been able to attract funding again as well this year. And so, so slowly we've overcome those challenges.
And what kind of goals does BAAITS have, or even for yourself?
So we, last October, November, we engaged in a strategic planning process.
I love strategic planning.
So we are slowly trying to incorporate, some of that work. And so that's exciting. That's, in this coming year, we're going to be implementing. We have finally decided, or the board has decided, and taken a vote to become a nonprofit. We are not a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
We are a fiscal sponsored organization. Actually have 2 fiscal sponsors, which is unheard of, but we have them. And so we will be looking into incorporating this year. And the last thing is that we were just granted a pretty sizable grant from the San Francisco Human Rights Foundation. Human Rights Commission, I'm sorry. And which is going to allow us to do a needs and assets assessment. So we're going to use, hopefully, a community action participatory research model, which is with community, by community, for community, to ask the questions, that we know, we hear of, and you're working with community as well, We know that there's a lot of housing insecurity. We know that there's a lot of food insecurity. We know that there's a lot of mental health, needs, spiritual needs in community. Suicidal ideation is huge in the community. Substance use and abuse is still huge in the community. And so we know all of these things, but we don't have it, we don't have the data around it. And so we're hoping to create that data, to be able to share it with folks, as well as to create more programming to be able to address those needs. And not just, go on, anecdotal information, but actually do a process. And so this year we're going to engage in that. That initiative is called Living in Abundance. And we aim to live in abundance, but we need to know what's going on first in order to reach there. The exciting piece is not only knowing the needs, but also knowing the assets. Because community is so resourceful. Two-spirit community is so resourceful. We have been, our own source of survival for generations now. And so we want to also memorialize that and also honor that. Because, best practices are already in existence in community. We just need to know what they are.
Yeah.
And so we're going to ask those questions. So be on the lookout. Surveys, focus groups, talking circles. We'll make sure to go down South Bay because we also want to know what's happening in South Bay, which is totally different than what's happening in Oakland or what's happening in San Francisco. And so be on the lookout for that. So those are some of the exciting things that are happening with us, aside from, this little event that's happening on February 10th.
I like how you say little.
Oh no, it's turning to be a very beautiful offering, filled with activities. And so please visit our website. Please visit the powwow information page and register to where all the events that you are able to. They are open to the public. Again, our focus is Two-Spirit and Indigenous queer folks, but this programming is also for their families, their friends, and their accomplices.
I like that. And then for more information, you can check out www.BAAITS.org/2024-powwow. So at IHC, where I'm from, Indian Health Center, sorry, I'm all yes, queen. We believe that culture is medicine. And so what does culture is medicine mean to you?
For me, and ever since I have, so I grew up in a very racialized space. I grew up in the Central Valley. And so you had the white landowners, pretty much MAGA supporting. You had the immigrants, and then you had the second, third generation Mexican Americans. Had very, very few Black community members. And because I was, I like books, and I was studious, and I did well. I experienced all the honor classes. I experienced all the advanced placement classes in high school, which in the classroom I was very isolated because there's where, a lot of very blatant racism happened. What was a saving grace for me was to be connected with the immigrant community and to be connected with mentors who taught us about the greatness of our people. That taught us about the Mayans, that taught us about the Aztecs, that taught us about the Incas. And it's still such a sense of pride that even experiencing kind of on a daily basis, the derogatory name calling, that once I was with this other community, I could block that off. And I could let that, not deter me from what I needed to do. and know who I was,
Mm-hmm.
and know what people I came from, and what greatness we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me that was critical in my survival, because on the other end, home was rough.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a long line of alcoholics and drug addicts, and so I share this. My senior year in high school, my mom and I were homeless. I was getting accepted to all these, including Ivy League schools, and my acceptance letters were fortunately getting to us, but I was reading them, with my mom and I not having a home.
Mm-hmm.
So, so this source of pride was so critical. I think over the years, in reconnecting with my mother's and father's indigenous language, indigenous culture, visiting my mother's and father's hometown in the high mountains,
Mm-hmm.
and hearing community members speak the language, and some of them not even speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then to know that there's still sacredness there.
All right, and then don't forget Indian Health Center's upcoming event in March, Mexica New Year. And that'll be March 15th through 17th at Amapush Farm in San Jose, California. We hope to see you there. For more information, check out our website, www.aztecadancers.com.
Thank you so much for this offering and this opportunity. We look forward to continuing collaborating in this way and many other ways, and to be in community celebrating.